Hello, hello. I am James and I live in Manchester in the UK. And you're listening to English with a Brew, a podcast where I talk about different day-to-day topics to help you learn English the most natural way possible. And that is only by listening to it. And if you want to support this podcast, read transcripts and get exclusive access to more episodes, go to patreon.com/English with a Brew. As we say in Manchester, get a brew on, and let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. In this episode, I'm going to talk about pollution and the different types of pollution that can affect our lives. It's a very important subject and also one that is very relevant these days because sadly there is a lot of pollution and we as humans now understand the impact of high levels of pollution on our planet. But first, what is pollution? Pollution is a word that describes anything that we introduce into our environment that has a negative effect. It harms our environment. It can affect the animals that live in it. And also it can affect the plants and the trees. And also it can affect our own lives in many different ways. There are lots of different types of pollution, and some are more obvious, while some are a little less obvious, and we don't think about them as much. One type of pollution is quite well known. We hear a lot about it in documentaries and on the news, and that is water pollution. Water pollution is caused by lots of different things. Some are visible and some are invisible. One of the most visible causes is the amount of plastic and rubbish that there is in the sea, the rivers and the lakes. Humans generate a lot of rubbish or trash. And we also use a lot of plastic, which takes a long time to break down or decompose. Some plastics take approximately 500 years to decompose. However, we have discovered that they don't completely decompose. Plastic particles, or tiny pieces of plastic, get smaller and smaller until you can't see them anymore, but they can still be eaten by fish and other animals. Another type of pollution that cannot be seen is air pollution, and air pollution is caused mainly by emissions from all the vehicles in the world, like cars, lorries, and aeroplanes. And farming animals, or the processes that support the farming of animals, like growing their food, or deforestation, when you clear an area of trees to create the space to farm animals. Another kind of pollution is light pollution, which is when something generates a large amount of artificial light. So when we as humans build huge cities, gigantic cities with millions of people, billions of inhabitants, all the light from the buildings, the cars and the street lights accumulate and can make a whole area less dark or brighter. An easy way to see if you are in an area or if you live in an area with a lot of light pollution is to look up at the night sky. It needs to be a clear night, a night with no clouds in the sky. And sometimes there can be enough light pollution that you cannot see the stars. But out in the countryside, where the skies are still darker, you can still see the stars. At first, this might not seem like a big problem, but light pollution can affect animals, particularly nocturnal animals, because they need the daylight or the darkness of the nighttime to regulate their behavior, to tell them what to do and when. The final type of pollution that I'm going to talk about today is noise pollution. And noise pollution is when something creates so much noise that it disturbs people or animals. Like light pollution, noise pollution is usually much worse near big cities where there are a lot of people, there is a lot of traffic and industry. At first, noise pollution may seem less damaging or harmful than the other types of pollution. But in fact, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that too much noise can raise our levels of stress in humans, which can also increase the risk of other physical problems. So, as humans, we cause or contribute to all of these types of pollution in some way. And because they impact us and the wildlife that we share our planet with, it's our responsibility to do what we can to help, to lower the levels of pollution in the world where and when and however we can. It's also important that scientists and engineers continue to research new ways and new technologies that can help us care for our planet. Thank you for listening as always, and take care. And that's everything for today's episode of English with a Brew. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you did or if you didn't, and tell me which topics you'd like to hear me talk about in future episodes. And don't forget, you can read the transcript for this episode and get access to more exclusive content over on my Patreon page. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time it is where you are right now. Take care.